This is the Equatorial Broadcast. I'm Michael Arden. It's Sunday, March 1st, 2026. Today, from our food desk, we bring you a report on a dish built from classical Italian technique but adapted for gluten-free cooking. It is a ragù alla Bolognese, made with corn penne pasta, prepared through a sequence of steps more often associated with restaurant kitchens. Nora Elling has the story.
In the kitchen, the process begins quietly. Before vegetables are chopped or meat meets heat, a pot of beef broth is brought to a slow simmer. According to cooks who prepare this dish, starting with broth establishes both flavor and structure, two qualities especially important when the final pasta will be gluten-free. Bones or shank are combined with onion, carrot, bay leaves, salt, and water. Over 45 minutes, the broth develops clarity and a light gelatin structure that later helps the sauce adhere to corn-based pasta. Once the broth is set aside, the attention turns to the soffritto, the trio at the heart of many Italian sauces. Onions, carrots, and celery are finely diced and cooked slowly in olive oil until they soften and release sweetness. With gluten-free pasta, cooks say there is less starch available to absorb flavors. As a result, the sauce must carry more aromatic density on its own, and the soffritto plays that foundational role. When the vegetables have softened, 1.5 kilograms of ground beef, or a mix of beef and pork, is added. The heat rises. The goal here is not merely to cook the meat through, but to brown it deeply. Observers note that gluten-free dishes benefit from sauces with pronounced structure. The browning creates those early Maillard compounds, the roasted flavors and browned proteins that later help the ragu become cohesive. Tomato paste follows. It is pushed into the center of the pot and cooked until it darkens several shades, from bright red to a muted brick tone. Cooks describe this as caramelization. Instead of adding bulk, the paste becomes a concentrated layer of roasted acidity. This step, more than any other, shapes the eventual color and density of the ragu. The wine reduction marks the most precise stage. The recipe specifies Postales del Fin del Mundo, a Cabernet Sauvignon Malbec blend from Patagonia. Wine producers say the region's cold climate produces Cabernets that are high in tannin and clean in acidity. Malbec contributes weight and depth. A full cup of the wine is added to the pan, where it releases the browned fragments collected during the meat stage. As it reduces, the wine thickens into a dark glaze, its alcohol evaporating, its tannins binding to the fats and proteins in the pot. Food researchers note that this natural binding effect helps the final sauce cling effectively to gluten-free pasta. With the reduction complete, the broth returns, 3.5 to 4 cups. The pot settles into a long simmer, typically 90 minutes to 2 hours. Over time, the mixture slowly tightens. Vegetables dissolve into the sauce. Collagen from the broth merges with the wine reduction. What began as separate components becomes a single, unified ragu, thick enough to hold to the spoon and glossy enough to signal proper emulsification. Near the end of cooking, a few tablespoons of milk or cream are stirred in. Italian culinary tradition explains that dairy softens acidity from both the wine and tomato paste and smooths the tannins that have concentrated during reduction. In this gluten-free version, the dairy also provides an important textural finish, rounding the sauce so it doesn't read as sharp against corn-based pasta. Meanwhile, the pasta itself cooks separately. Corn penne maintains its shape but absorbs little of the surrounding sauce. For this reason, a half cup of starchy pasta water is reserved. When the pasta enters the ragu, the water helps emulsify the mixture, tightening the sauce around each piece and preventing separation. The final flavors are described as layered and unusually deep. The first impression is the savoriness created by deeply browned meat, a warm, roasted foundation. Beneath that sits the softened sweetness of the soffritto, followed by the roasted, almost smoky undertones of caramelized tomato paste. According to tasters, the reduced Cabernet Malbec blend adds an earthy structure with notes reminiscent of cocoa, dark berries, and dried herbs. not as distinct flavors, but as background architecture that carries the sauce forward. After 2 hours of reduction, the dairy softens any sharpness, giving the ragu a velvety consistency. Texturally, the sauce is dense but not heavy. It clings to the corn penne without sliding off or pooling. Aroma analysts note the presence of slow-built layers, the mellow sweetness of cooked onion, the herbal lift from celery, the faint fruit and tannin of the Patagonia wine, and the rounded finish provided by dairy. All of these contribute to a dish that is gluten-free, not by omission, but by design. Culinary instructors observing the method describe it as significantly more advanced than the ingredients alone suggest. Every stage, broth preparation, soffritto construction, Maillard browning, tomato paste caramelization, controlled wine reduction, and long uncovered simmer, serves a distinct technical purpose. The sequencing resembles restaurant practice, where heat control and timing determine outcome as much as recipe proportions. The result is a ragu that aligns with regional Italian tradition while functioning within the demands of a gluten-free kitchen, a sauce that behaves, tastes, and presents with the depth of a classical preparation, supported by deliberate technique rather than substitution. For the Equatorial Broadcast, I'm Nora Elling.
A detailed examination of how structure, patience, and technique bring complexity to a gluten-free version of a classic Italian dish. This is the Equatorial Broadcast. I'm Michael Arden.